Not being reprimanded or anything.
Yeah, their stuff in checks.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Great day here today, and I think this is our first one in September. Or was last
Yeah.
week? Yeah, first
First
one in
one.
September. I saw the Halloween decorations on the Bucksport Road, so you know the season has changed. I'm a big fan of very early decorations, so.
Should go by my mother's house. She's got, hers are all decorated for Halloween too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I even saw some Christmas lights. Actually, it was more in like the Surrey area, but I don't know if that was maybe they just do
That's
that
too
year
early.
round.
Just assume they didn't take them down from last year.
That's what I'm. A few notes. One is we got a $17,000 check from Maine Municipal Association as part of their risk department as a dividend for being under on our claims and as you know as a portion of how much we spent. So was very happy to receive that, not just for the additional revenue, of course, which is nice, but you know, shows some of the efforts that the team has made over the past year and more to improve safety compliance. I think we all saw that at the last city council meeting and some of the safety things we're doing, the upgrade of Thomas, our fire code person, to also handle like all facilities safety as well, like really just trying to take a proactive approach to safety in the organization. Doesn't mean we're perfect just yet, but that something couldn't happen, but I think it's a good sign that we're receiving money back from MMA, and then also we'll keep the we'll keep the gas on this and keep upgrading our safety pieces. The second big thing for me today is the bonding kind of infrastructure bond cycle of where we're going. I know we Nate and Mike talked to Jim Safian earlier this week to kind of get the process going. I think we're aiming for an October council meeting to sort of vote on a one-year infrastructure investment plan. Knowing the work that needs to lead up to that, I talked to Nate and some others, and we started kind of marking on the calendar. We'd like to start using this finance committee meeting to start really, you know, dialing in the infrastructure piece. And, you know, if I'm a big believer, you put a date on it, and that's kind of the deadline for things. So we're looking at the September 20th, which is 2 Fridays from now. That'll be our first sort of infrastructure update.
I thought we weren't
Oh,
having that
is that
meeting.
we're not having a warrant that week, but no meeting
I
that
don't think
week.
we're having a meeting either.
No, I don't
'cause-
believe, I think.
Yeah,
my
the
notes-
20th.
Then
yeah,
we'll
we're
do-
not having a meeting.
We'll do the 4th, then we'll start October 4th.
All of our plans just gone awry.
Yeah, we drew.
Well, what happened?
I drew on the giant calendar in my office. I didn't see that.
I won't be here anyway, so what about the 27th?
Yeah, the 27th will work.
Okay.
Oh, I did take that one off, okay.
You did, okay.
Oh yeah, that'll work great. Sorry, I don't have it.
Look at that. We're back in.
27th, and then the 4th. So we'll do 2 in a row. The 27th, they'll actually give the team a little more time. Will be sort of a review of the initial list and kind of just directionally, and I'll make sure we email council out to, you know, here's it for facilities that we're thinking of. Here's for roads, obviously is the most important piece. I think we've talked about Pump House Point and that sort of depreciating asset for the city, potential for the water department to return there, and some estimates on that. And we have some digital infrastructure, a variety of things that the team is working on, but we'll make sure to have the kind of first full list to go by you all and to see what you think this is 1 year, what this could be maybe put into the 2 to 5 year planning area, and then we can come back the next week on the 4th with a little more detail on kind of where we're at with the 1 year. Nate's going to be preparing, you know, in addition, and Ashley, you know, kind of the financial overview of where we're at with debt, where we're at with, you know, previous bonds, where we're at with, you know, our total capacity to bond, similar to kind of the budget cycle, where other cities and towns are here in Maine. You know, he's going to have a pretty robust briefing on that, just so you all know directionally where we should be. I've been looking into this a lot too. A lot of cities and towns across Maine do this. I think you mentioned that, Michelle, in the budget cycle, of kind of pull off some of this infrastructure piece into the bond cycle with roads, et cetera, and not having it directly on each budget cycle. So, you know, in some ways this could kind of establish a pattern as we start to think about year to year on what we want to put currently.
Are we gonna see the, like, not just the 1 year, but are we gonna see the 5 year? Because I think it's hard to plan for something if you're only looking at the 1 year. I feel like you need to see out in case things need to be moved around a little bit and prioritized. Because I just feel like we'll get here next year and like, oh my goodness, we need another, I'm making this number up, $5 million, and which we should have
Totally.
shaved off a little bit of, for this year and kind of spread it out a little bit, so.
My direction to staff and to department heads has been, like, what do you really need this year? And then, but like, go to, year one, but maybe even bleed a little more. But I think the expectation is we'll do this because, we need to figure out the funding and pencils up this fall for, spring roads, et cetera, but within the next 6 months, we're gonna have 1, 5, and 10-year infrastructure plan finalized as like our new book in the same way as the budget book. And I really feel like, next season, maybe even the spring bonding cycle if we need to, like, this should almost be algorithmic. I mean, a much more further inventory of all the roads in Ellsworth. When you guys choose these roads that we say, okay, Foster Street's gonna be done, that'll have a 10-year life cycle, whether it's a reclaim or a redo, and should it have a repave at some point as part of that. And we put all these things in a mix, and it's essentially every year, it's like, this is what you should do for roads, and we can obviously dial it in and change it. But to your point, Tammy, I've seen the previous binders on infrastructure planning. We're gonna start with this 1 year and what we really need, kind of get that priorities, but over the next 6 months, get the 1, 5, 10, and that's our new book. And we're editing it each time, but it really is given the full picture, so.
And the debt, where we are on the debt and like our 10-year debt that we have out right now. So
Yep.
I think that would be super helpful.
Also, I would assume that you would be very cautious in the grouping, that you're grouping things that have the same expiration date, if you will. So we don't have a 20-year life cycle that mixed in with a 10-year life cycle, so we're bonding for 20 years, but yet the usable life is 10.
Yep.
That's important to me, that all come together.
So when we bond, we can bond, like, because we do a 20-year bond, we can do it by project, and so that the bond, like, part of the bond really is a 5-year amortization, part of the bond is a 10-year, and then that's 20-year. We can do that too for infrastructure projects.
I think it's very important that we don't finance
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
beyond
Oh, yeah.
its useful life.
Absolutely.
I don't, that's my concern.
So that bond drops off at 5, that part of the bond is paid off, and it
Yep.
reduces the
As
principal.
long as,
It's a,
I just don't want to finance something that's
It's only got
yeah.
a,
over
No,
its useful
absolutely
life.
agreed.
Yeah, and there'll be some, we started getting this in the budget cycle, right? A lot of our trucks, the fire trucks, our fleets, this and that, but we're thinking kind of going more towards this lease. But that's typically been in infrastructure, so, do you bond to lease? That's kind of financing on a financing. Yeah, I can see your face on this. But now in some ways, because you're not doing that, you are, if we do this lease cycle, we are putting that into the budget cycle a little bit more immediately on the taxpayer. So just kind of gaming out those financial pieces and what we're, because once we do that, even like the lease on the police station, once we go to these areas, it starts to make your yearly. So I really want to kind of figure that out as, there might be some financial stability with some of these lease cycles with the fleets, but if we're buying them outright through a bond or some of the bigger trucks, like the fire trucks and et cetera, as opposed to leasing those, because we could get to such a big lease coverage year to year that's so those are things I think that are going to be some of the more tricky, especially as our last budget cycle and talking about leases and how much time we spent there. We might want to have a whole day on just the fleet.
Yeah.
And that might be, again, Tammy, to your point on the full picture, is it immediate? Like, we got to tackle those and, get that out to the band bond so we can, especially for the things that sort of need to be funded so that they can be shovels in and when the ground thaws. But some of those longer term lease, how it affects things, total cycles, I'm hoping over a 6-month period we'll have that full kind of plan together for the financing, so.
I think we too, Charlie, we need to look at the cost of the bond bank and their interest rate versus going up to a public bond. Sometimes those public bonds, they're more expensive up front, but you get such a good rate on those when you sell them, that it makes, in the length of that debt service, it's actually cheaper. So that also needs to be,
Okay.
to be looked at. I don't know who we would use now, but
Yeah, let's talk.
It's a good way of looking at both.
Yeah, let's maybe talk to our bankers on that, and, I know I talked to them already on just getting a little more of like some expert financial advice. I know Safian is great in this area in some ways, but long-term in terms of our total finances as an organization.
Yeah.
Because the bond market is changing. We're obviously seeing potential some rate drops from the Fed that'll happen soon. We're already seeing some of the interest rates there change. I don't know exactly how that's going to affect the bond market, but gosh, in 2020, 2021, if you could get out, I know we did like a $2.6 billion bonding for our unemployment insurance trust fund in Massachusetts that I was a part of. And like that was, I think, one of the questions the governor asked at the time was like, why aren't we bonding for $10, $15 billion if we're going to go, especially with a statewide bond like that on the employer base, it was like less than 1%. Like that's free, especially in that, looking at the inflation. So if we can get better rates.
Yeah, and it just, right now, I think we need to get our rating better.
Yeah, that was my concern.
That's,
why I
yeah,
went with the bond
so
bank.
we may need to go to the bond bank this time, but, because our rating dropped.
Yeah.
But if we can get it's a great way to increase your rating once everything is, where it should be.
Yeah.
And then go out for the larger ones.
Yeah, I think that 6 months ago, let's bond bank. This is going to be our jam.
Yeah, this
Now-
year, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not, but I'm just saying, as we're looking into the future and what we're going to do, that's definitely something we need to think about, especially the larger ones.
Yeah, and some of the, like you said, the amortization, sometimes you do the 20-year bond, but you pay it down earlier, and there's a lot of complications on how it layers
Yeah.
into our finances, so.
It's a great way to structure bonds, is to go public.
And to your point, Steve, I know I talked to Sue Lassard about, in Bucksport, they have like a metric of 3 miles a year now, and that's kind of their, one of their goals for what they want to do. So do we want to have those types of like mileage estimates? But, and Sue was kind of mentioning, you also don't want to be, we are in a backlog, right? I mentioned previous budget cycles that councils have passed, a certain amount of money for roads that actually never got spent. So that, we've got there's one kind of impetus, which is we need to do a bunch now. But we do that, we're setting us up for potentially even more of that later on. So these are the fun parts, but the not so fun parts. But I know the team's really excited about this because this is like the tangible stuff too, the stuff that I think the citizens of Ellsworth especially, and then also how we layer in not just our own, like what the city's gonna pay for roads, but High Street and, the Surrey Road next year and some of the main DOT stuff, and having like a Gantt chart of the calendar of projects that were going on so you can see when things will start, maybe, getting that out to the public.
Yeah.
More is trying to increase our communications on public works projects and those things too, to kind of communicate, hey, what's happening in here and what the infrastructure plan is, so.
That's good stuff, thank you.
Yeah. And that's it for me.
Stole all the stuff I was gonna say, but,
He took your thunder.
yeah, no.
Meeting adjourned.
But, it was nice talking to Jim Safian, obviously being new, just to get his knowledge and wisdom on how to navigate and get to where we need to go from here, and obviously kind of backdating, like, okay, if you want this ban set up for November 1st, let's just say, we need to have this at council by this date and have it published by this date, so all that stuff is great for me, because, like I said, I'm new here. But, yeah, and obviously the team's still working and doing great, and I know you had a question about Juniper. Did you want to bring that up now or after the meeting?
I can bring it up.
Okay. Well, we were talking because the Juniper Cemetery, I don't know if you just want to kind of let,
So we pay a bill, there's a guy that mows the Juniper Cemetery, and the bill is due, he dropped it off. Sue has taken over the finances with, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name.
Jen Zala.
Jen
Yes,
Zala,
Jen. And in order to get Sue on the accounts at TD Bank, we need minutes from the finance committee or the council, so I don't know if this is gonna go to the council on the agenda, saying that she has signing rights for the cemetery in order to write checks, because that's all out of the Juniper Cemetery account.
I personally feel like it needs to come from the treasurer.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it shouldn't be,
Okay, so
Sue.
then we'll need to get you.
and that I don't think would need a
Yeah, that's city, it's city finances, because
Yeah.
we've taken that over. It should not be separated.
Okay, it is separate, it's still separated, so the cemetery account is at TD Bank, and Sue has been doing the finances.
Okay.
For,
But,
We'll look, and I should also note that, we can look into this offline. There's a council agenda item about the reestablishment of the cemetery committee, really, I think, just for this purpose. This is an enormous project. There's a substantial amount of reserve funding across multiple cemeteries. We're kind of uncovering CDs and other things, bank transfers, there's a decent amount of funding in these areas. Some of them have, like the Higgins Trust, they can be used for one thing, they can be used for another. There's an enormous amount of accounting, and it's in the charter that we're supposed to have a cemetery committee. So that's the recommendation, is that we reestablish this, and kind of
Yeah.
first order of business is gonna be, a regular scheduled meetings and cadence for them to, really take over a lot of this piece of.
in Sue's title, she's tax collector treasurer. So,
oh, she is the
Deputy-
treasurer?
Deputy treasurer.
I don't know if it's deputy or not.
Should be deputy.
But would she, even being deputy, couldn't she still be a signer on the account? As.
I think the charter states that it has to be the treasurer.
clerk? Okay, so we'd have to look
Treasurer,
into it.
yeah.
Okay.
The only thing that because we're gonna get back to where we were before, where we had, the public works director doing grants and money and things like that, and then, someone else doing it and someone else, you really, for your benefit, Nate, you really should just have everything under you.
Okay.
And then she can work with her
Yeah.
and do all of that, but all your bills and everything should be coming out of one place.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that this is hopefully temporary, that we're not gonna keep that cemetery forever, but still, you're ultimately responsible for any funds for the city, so you really should just be careful and make sure, because the record keeping, any checks, any money that goes in and out, all of that really.
but now why was that at TD Bank? Because were they
Who set
separate at one
that up?
point? Yeah, I don't know, that's what I'm asking. I don't-
It's been set up since I started in November that way.
And no one, I can't sign any of the checks from that
Well,
account.
When we took that over, when we brought that in-house, that the first thing that should have happened is that it went in your name and no one else's,
Yeah.
or whoever signs for city staff. So you really should, whoever signs checks, that's who
Yeah.
needs to be on that, like everything else. And then it's all under your control. And then if it goes back to this committee, then you can sign it
Yeah.
off, but you've got, because that's gonna be audited. Doesn't matter whose account that is, that's gonna be audited because it's under the city now.
Yeah.
So, I just wouldn't, I wouldn't,
I guess that's one of those, I was confused of how it got to TD Bank, how it's, because it was separate, if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't part of the city.
Correct.
wasn't, and then
Yeah.
we took it over for hopefully temporarily.
So I think that's why they
And that
didn't
was
switch the
Ann
accounts
also,
then.
yeah.
If Ann took it over and she thought it was temporary, she didn't just change over the accounts, and is my guess.
Yeah, but it
And
really
she
should,
wants
even if it's
it all
temporary,
separate.
it's audited, well, it's ours, so it really needs
Okay.
to be.
And it should be running through our general ledger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Steve, you have something?
I just wanted to further that conversation a little bit. We here are sitting here talking about the city side, the bank has their own side. We really need to solve both problems, not just our side. We've got to comply with the bank's side as well, whatever changes need to be made. It's not like we can decide to do one thing and then you get to the bank and the
Yeah.
bank says, no, you're not authorized yet.
Yeah.
So it's got to be collaborative between the bank and us. I agree with everything that's been said here, but we've got to take that comment to the bank, and the bank may have some bylaws that says, oh, we got to do
Oh,
it
they
this
do.
way. We got to close this account, we need to open a new one,
Yeah.
so.
Who's signing on it now?
I don't even know whose name's on it.
Nobody. So we were able to get a check written from the bank, like we got a banker's check, the beginning of summer to pay for mowing, because we called and explained the situation, and they're like, okay, that's fine, we'll give you a banker's check off of the account, just come in and pick it up. So we were able to do that. Nobody is signing on it now. There's nobody here that has signing authority on that account. So then we'll have to get it switched over to Nate, which should be easy because he is the director of
Yeah,
finance
the bank
now.
will allow you
Yeah.
to do it, Nate, as treasurer and finance director. You won't have to worry about it. You may have to,
You need an order, a council
A
order that
council
states
order
that
that-
we took it over, I think,
Yeah,
probably just
some-
some minutes that have been,
yeah.
um,
You just need to prove,
notarized.
yeah, that the city took it over, and that, you shouldn't have any problem with that
Okay.
from that point on.
So maybe just
Because you're treasurer.
take the minutes of whatever that meeting was.
Yeah.
That had that, come in as finance director.
Yeah.
If
Do you
we
know
need-
around what time period that was that we took that over? Just so I can find those?
Say December, oh,
Sue should know.
Was there
Mark may know.
November.
What was
Because
that?
we, yeah, because
Yes.
I started November 11th or November 20th, I can't remember. And we had already had it here, so
Yeah, it was my
it was
first
before.
meeting, so it was
Oh,
the
okay.
first November, it was November.
All right.
Council meeting.
Well, that makes it easier.
Yeah.
Find the
So,
minutes.
yeah, just do that and then keep it under,
Well, I agree 100%. I don't like having all these, and then it's always a hassle of whose name's on it? They're not here, and yeah, let's keep it all under one umbrella.
yeah.
On the cemeteries note, we, thanks to Mark and Jen Sella, helped out with the final arrangement of getting some of the old graveyard stones put back together, and, you know, continuing that project. You know, I did get to talk on Mark's great recommendation to the guy doing that, really interesting conversation just about that graveyard and long-term needs, and, you know, how we can kind of restore that to what it's supposed to be like.
This is Juniper or?
No, the old
The
burial
old
ground.
burial ground.
Yeah, right out
That's
here.
amazing.
So, you know, every year kind of plugging away on it, but there is, you know, it seems like there could be some surplus funding in some of these accounts. And again, it's something for the cemetery committee to really be pencils up as we reestablish it, to put a long-term plan
And
for
we've
that.
got 3 others that belong to the city too that really need to be looked at.
And-
I don't know if anybody's even looked at those cemeteries in a while. So-
Yeah, Jen Solog kind of has made a round, and we'll talk more about the council meeting, kind of an inventory of, you know, actually going to those cemeteries, what condition they're in. Also has found a few that have veterans in them that have sort of been family plots that have been left alone, but, you know, are still being flagged and, but are, you know, and so really taking a longer look. And, you know, there is a decent amount of cemetery reserve funding in accounts, but we gotta, you know, also have that financial piece in order so that we have a pretty robust plan to maintain these places.
So just, so that it doesn't get confused though, we hold funds for private cemeteries and those cemetery trusts. We can't touch that money. That's not ours.
Yeah.
That money goes to them. So it's Woodbine, was Juniper,
Mhm.
Nicole Cemetery, and what's the fourth?
North Ellsworth, Higgins,
Well, the Higgins Trust has nothing to do with this other trust. There's 2 trusts for the Nicolan. What was the other
I
one?
feel like there's
Juniper.
5.
Yeah, there's 5, but that's not our money.
I have the list in my
Okay,
office.
so just because it's in our account, that's money, that interest, those dividends or interest, whatever it is, twice a year is supposed to be given to those cemeteries.
yeah, and that's one of the
Just
issues
that's
we're running
fine.
into here, is that we're kind of doing the financial accounting. There's like a long list of all the funds, some of them, like you said, they're supposed to be going to different areas. They haven't necessarily
Yeah.
been distributed out, so that's why some of the maintenance and the backlogs, they're individually assigned. Some of them have split versions of their funding, can go to beautification, other to Higgins. What do you do when that hasn't been spent in 5 years? Do you only account the dividends or interest in the current year? Do you do backlog maintenance? So really getting a holistic financial accounting of all our cemeteries, all the funding, how it should be spent, probably pretty substantial policy going forward, so that it's just, here's the accounting, here's how the money should be spent, and then all the auditing procedures are in place so that it's tracked, and the money that's supposed to be spent on the type of cemetery it's supposed to be spent on is done. Because right now, it's just,
So I did talk with John Phillips about the Nicolan Cemetery, because he's the head of the cemetery now, because since Mr. McGowan died. And he has a person that's looking into the last time the city paid them, so that you can then go forward with the Higgins money and with the other trust money.
I think it was in December was the last time we paid out
Paid out,
dividends.
okay.
Yeah, I have it, like, I have the printout in my office.
Which
that's the
is
one where
That's the
there's
one,
3 or
yeah.
4 different ones that got paid out.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's perfect then.
So, because it's always twice a year,
Okay,
December
yeah.
and, well, usually like January and.
So, yeah, and I think
July.
it was in December or January, and we haven't paid out since then. Because I know Ann gave gave us a spreadsheet and we paid out on it, and I do have that printout. And it was a recent one, but we haven't paid out since then, so.
Yep, that's normal.
Okay.
Yeah, and they found the CD on one of the other ones, and so we're getting there, but again, it's kind of a thing for we also have big reconciliation work on a bunch of other projects, so hoping the cemetery committee can kind of help increase our capacity to sort of stay on this, have a monthly cadence meetings, get a plan together on the finances first, inventory of all the cemeteries, how it's supposed to be sent, work with the finance team on policies and procedures. And then in some ways it should again be algorithmic at a point in time. There's a policy and procedure, these go forward and not, where is this money, where's the CD? I found an Excel sheet in somebody's old files that has things, like we need to kind of institutionalize this so we don't have to do this kind of work again. So not the most exciting part of it, especially because it's not, but it really, really important work.
We're getting there, though.
You are, you've come so
Yeah.
far.
I've been in Ellsworth for 6 months now. Actually, yeah, 6 months. This weekend.
It's only been 6 months.
It's only been 6
Seriously.
months,
Oh my
but,
gosh, you've come so far.
Seems like forever, but my old boss used to say, if you don't appreciate someone, you depreciate them. I'd like to appreciate Charlie just for his efforts. Finance department's night and day what it was when I first got here.
Certainly is.
So when I first got here, it was, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little rough to come in and do what I had to do, but I feel like the team's great now. Everyone's clicking on all cylinders. We're figuring things out. We got Tammy if I need her. I talked to her earlier this week. I mean, just it's nice to have people supporting us. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, and to share the love back about it, I think arriving here, that was a big piece of the organization that was broken. And as I've said many times, sometimes government is difficult, and sometimes it's in some ways easy because you find the thing that's most broken and you try and fix it, and you build a great team around it. I think we all went up into that auditorium, established a war room, and you all probably thought that was a little crazy at first. Just daily meeting, we all lived together in one room, but I don't know. I think I even 2 or 3 months removed from that, I kind of missed those times in some ways. Of just how simple that North Star was.
Just some of those times.
I mean, it was so important, because the city
yeah.
can't do anything without a finance
Oh,
office.
yeah.
If your finance office is broken, the whole city's broken. So
And that's
it
why,
was- it was
Charlie's
needed.
initiative
It
just to
was-
come in and just get us where we need to be at. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
and
great.
we appreciate it.
Now
Well,
that
we
get,
appreciate you
yeah.
and your
Thanks for
team.
sticking it out.
Yeah, now I find I have to pull myself out of it. Like, I used to be a little bit like, oh, what's going to go on in this office? And now I've had to pull myself, like yesterday, we have a 10 o'clock on Thursdays. I do the invoice approvals and the purchase orders and kind of ask questions of the team. And then I find myself there for 20, 30 minutes shooting the breeze about other things. We talked a lot about infrastructure last there, and then I have to be like, all right, I got to get out of here. Then we were in like economic development zone. It's like, this is Janice area.
More fun talks are taking place now. Yeah,
More fun than cemeteries?
yeah, exactly.
Did you have something, Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that a little bit, that I was sitting here thinking that, not that the cemetery business isn't super important, but it was so far down on the rung of importance that now you folks have knocked off some of that important stuff. So some of the stuff that was looked at as very, very small raises importance, because there's always the most important item on the list.
Yeah.
And when you've knocked apart all these big, high numbers here, all of those small things that amounted to this much now grows in size, and they become more of a conversation.
Yeah.
And isn't it nice we're sitting here talking about the cemetery, really? Because a year ago, that would have been so far down in that hole of importance. And now, because of the work, that's getting some priority, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, it's also neat. I think we put a huge backlog together, and I still have that there. And there's so many more things that are just in the done, completed. So you're right, Steve. We get to these, and just like the institutionalization, I think, is important for the organization, so that we don't have to. Not only just how do we solve it now, but how is it just like so? How do we policy and procedure it? How do we like the things that we're doing now on deadlines for department directors on when they have to submit all their invoices and approvals, and it was contentious at first, and took a lot of ironing out of what the best time, is it this date, is it this time? And now, those things come in on time, as opposed to, I know, Ashley and just chasing every single person. Hey, we need it, we're trying to get this warrant together. Like, that seems to be a lot better. And even things like the employee appreciation line that we put into the budget this year to kind of standardize, now we're kind of, all right, we need a policy and procedure on this, on how those monies are spent, what they're, it's taking a little work to get that procedure together, but then we won't talk about it again. Like, here it is, read the manual, read the policy, and that kind of work is, I think, going to really pay off in the future, and having this team be more of a policy arm of government. And, I'm actually already having some conversations about budget cycles next year, and how do we lay that in the union negotiations, and I'm just so excited for January and kicking the tires in this budget cycle. So, and Big Finance Friday,
Next week,
that's
yeah.
next week.
Yeah.
Next week?
Or Freaky Friday, I think, as you call it.
I called it Freaky Friday. I
Freaky
said,
Friday.
when's our next Freaky Friday?
Freaky
Something
Friday.
like that. Yeah.
I like that name better.
Anybody from the audience have anything?
Well, it's hard to hear from way back here for an old man, but.
Oh, sorry.
We can start from
No,
the top.
no, that's okay.
I gotta go to work.
Nate.
I look forward to next Friday. It's been a year and a half since we've started asking for information on expenses and balances and budget. And you folks have probably been asking. I'm excited to look at what you're putting forward next Friday.
I'll have it on paper and on online, so,
We did it last month too, Gary.
yeah.
Well, I just saw it on your website.
Oh, okay.
That you
All
were
right.
doing that
Yep.
second Tuesday,
Second Friday, yep.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Freaky
So
Friday.
I have the audit on there, I've been reading through it.
It's good.
And I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask it anyway.
Of course you are.
Any chance you wanna share the management letter in your response? No.
To management letter of response?
You get a management letter with the audit?
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I don't know. Let me and Nate circle up. There's been so many of these things, but yeah.
Historically, that's been few folks.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you the general. I mean, let me look into it, Gary.
I'm not gonna run it to the Ellsworth American.
No, honestly, it's
Public record,
It's
public
so,
record.
and it's
It's-
our responses. right?
Yeah, I think.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in general, especially because this is 2023. I don't think a single staffer actually is here from that year, which is like is
Yeah.
noted. Absolutely, hiring more staff. I think I mentioned the Ellsworth American about even responded to them on some of these things, and even next year's audit is going to have some of these things as well. I'm sure, because the policies and procedures, staffing, live reconciling, all these things that should be happening and that we're getting towards need to happen. So let me look in that, Gary.
Putting up with a solar credit.
Yeah.
Boy, did we put a ton of work on you people with that one. Saving 26% on the electric bill.
Ashley loves it.
Yeah, Ashley's got a few emails saying on this one.
That's your job, Ashley.
Yeah,
It just kind of put,
it
we
just
yeah.
got put there. Yeah.
Congratulations.
She's great at that, yeah.
As a parting shot, do you take care of the electric bills?
No.
Okay. I have asked a number of times, the Maya Field Complex used to be like a couple $1,000s a month for electricity. You're using 42 cents worth. We need to look at that to save money because that was on a contract. So
Right.
as part of this project that the Rotary Club's doing, if we can terminate that electric service up there, get rid of it, the expense is gone, and then you put in a single 100 amp service to feed the little snack shack, and you get rid of that, you save $20,000 a year. Previous people in your position I've asked, and we've never So, and I don't know in the budget this year whether it's there or not, but whoever does your electric bills, they can contact me, we can talk about it, and I'll give them the numbers to find.
You can come with me after the meeting and we can look at it, but I don't think Demeyer's Field is that much in the electric bill.
Well, there's 1, 2, 3 services.
Yeah, if you want, we can go look at them, but like I
Okay,
said, I don't think
That'd be
they're.
great. I'm not complaining, I
Yeah.
just want to save money if we can.
Yeah,
And that's a great, there's also a Hydro, New England Electric, something NEB, that they're doing a project up in northern Maine that's about to go online. They're looking for credits basically to offload. It's really kind of interesting. But we might be already maxed out on our credits for solar in some of our facilities, so.
yeah, we are totally using all of the solar credits right now. We barely got the police department put on. We finagled it enough where I was like, can we please? They were part of City Hall, they moved, and she looked at it and she's like, just send me the bill and we'll see. I was able to send her the bill, and within a month to 3 months, she said it could usually take up to 3 months to get them fully on the cycle, but we'll start seeing them utilizing solar credits too for the police department, which is gonna be nice because their bill is pretty big.
A comment a couple months ago at one of your council meetings, that the highway garage wasn't on that list. I have the original list, it was on the highway garage should be getting those credits.
Yeah, I have the
So-
next bill that comes in. I've asked Leah and Deb, because they do all the accounts payable now.
Yeah.
I've asked them to give me the invoice so I can make an Excel spreadsheet to see
Okay.
who's on solar credits and who aren't, because we do have a spreadsheet, but I just want to verify who's on and who's not and what other accounts we have that could utilize being on some kind of solar credit, if it's the dam or solar, either one. If we can get them put on, we will.
It's great stuff, and again, kind of like cemeteries, now we're getting to it's not a huge amount of money, but every nickel we can spend or save around here. It also reminds me, I'm glad I talked about electricity and rates. We've had a big follow-up with me, Amanda, and Mike, and Revision Energy on the EV charging proposal. A few misconceptions. When I was saying fast chargers, I thought they're actually more in line in what's on the over at Franklin Park. They're actually the level 2, not the level 3s. So they would be compliant with yours. The level 3s are actually, that's the $1 million plus infrastructure investment, and Bar Harbor and a couple other areas were the first cities chosen for those. I'm gonna have a follow-up with Efficiency Maine of like why, Ellsworth actually I think makes more sense than Bar Harbor if you're,
Yeah.
as a service center, to put these types of, but that.
Year round.
And that's one piece that's but at the same time, got a little more dialed into what these ones would be, and I think, and I'm moving forward with gonna submit our proposal. I don't, the council will still have approval. I have it on the council meeting to talk about EV chargers. I'm not quite sure we'll get approval yet. Actually, the 5 municipalities who were part of this last round of funding were accepted, but now the applications are back because there's a Buy American clause that's now has to be done for the feds. So they have to get a different type of charger. So I want to be included in this next round to get that $80-some thousand Efficiency Maine credit. And then kind of come to council with the final proposal. I also talked about like, hey, if those aren't being used by EV chargers, do we have to make them only EVs? Can we have, is it, they're like, no, like there's no requirement. Of course you'd want to. So maybe it could be seasonal. Maybe we could see how much usage is there for these 8 chargers, but it wouldn't be. And these aren't going to be the giant, like they're going to be more of just like, the equivalent of a parking meter size thing out there. So especially for that, and going to 4 instead of 8 actually like doesn't change the cost. So I think it's even got more. And then also the other piece, which is what reminded me, is we'll make money over the long term because we can charge. It's not whatever you want. They typically, cities and towns are charging 35 cents a kilowatt hour versus the 24 cents that's like on the meter. So in addition to being an infrastructure upgrade, to maybe drawing some more people downtown, they call these destination chargers. You go have lunch, you charge up for a couple hours, so it can get you to Bar Harbor or down East Maine or where you need to go. It seems like a pretty good investment. And then really, talking revision about, all right, let's like, where do we want the superchargers? And how do we make the case to Efficiency Maine that this should be a place for like $1 million investment? Maybe that's the Franklin Park one, if they have enough power zone there. Maybe that's the marina, but building out like as part of infrastructure planning, some of those chargers.
Charging for Franklin Park.
Yeah, that, again, I don't want to get ahead of the council and other things, but
I'd
my,
like to borrow the credit card so I can fill up my truck today. Because the city's paying for people like him to charge their cars down there.
well,
But I have to pay for my gas.
yeah, or you could buy an EV car and get involved in the game, but the way I think of it is we should do the level 2s here that are paid for, that we have additional money that the city is charging, actually, because they are in the network, as we talked about. We'd be charging above market rates. The city would be making a cut. And then the next step, I think, is the superchargers over at Franklin Street that are also charged, where we require payment, and that could be even, there's a higher rate for those because they take more electricity. And then maybe some at the marina to drive tourism traffic down there. That, to me, seems like the right scope over the next 3 years to do. Level 2s here, that can be used as needed, but not necessarily just for EVs, so we're not taking those parking spots. Although if there's, 8 EVs that are there every day and they want to use them, and that's, over the long term, that's, we're going to need a lot more than that here. And while this money is, essentially we're paying 5%, 8% of an, $140,000 infrastructure investment, and then if we can get $1 million one, being some of the first cities and towns that does this. I think last time we talked about putting it on our website, making it more of a, hey, if you have these EV cars, come here, and we get 10 cents a kilowatt hour here and there. So, but I'll have a little more of an update on that at the council meeting. But just want to let you know, we're putting the application. It doesn't mean we're absolutely doing it. You have to prove funding after the application is finalized anyways. So that's kind of where we're at.
One question I have about that, last week we talked about, I asked the question about adapters, and it seems to me that now you can buy adapters, and maybe Mark, you could straighten me out. It seems that the car owner could buy adapters to hook into the high-speed charger if the car is non-compliant, is what I was told. I don't know that, but I from what I gathered and what I read, it seems that that's the coming thing, that the home car owner could buy an adapter to reduce the power speed. And I might be off on that. I had to ask a gentleman that's all about electric cars, and then he pointed me to a site. And the second question, and this is not a suggestion, this is a question. There was some talk about parking meters. Are parking meters easier to install at the electric site? So that if you choose to park in the electric site, you pay a meter cost? I'm asking, I don't know that. We talked last week about a credit card charge for the electric service, if you will. And I wonder if there is there some thought to maybe the meters are less expensive to put in at the existing sites that creates the turnover. And then the question comes, does Mr. Diesel park in that spot and pay the toll and prevent the electric guy from paying the toll? I don't know how all that works. Those are questions, not suggestions.
Yeah, let me, so I'm having a conversation with I think there was a proposal that was originally made, I don't think it was ever made it to council, on meters a few years ago, but, so we're restarting that conversation just to get you all that information, I think. But I'll also ask during that meeting, I think it's in 2 or 3 weeks, how that works. You have an EV charger next to a meter, do you also have a fee, or that's something you put in there as the EV spot to pay for, or is that typically considered like you factor that into the kilowatt hour rate you're paying by being there?
The only thing I would, is if we're gonna do this, that we put them in places we wanna draw people, not in places that are already busy. Like I had mentioned with the harbor, you just don't want them down there. There's no parking spaces in the summertime as it is, and you don't want someone leaving their car there for 2 hours to charge and, you know, not being using the services of the harbor. That harbor in the summertime, you go to try to put your boat, you can get your boat and we're parking sometimes up at Erkey.
Yeah, it's,
Around there because there's no parking, and then that also makes it so the person that's, you know, the vendors and stuff don't have places for their people to park. So it just, if we can draw it like, you know, in the park there or something like that, but not put them downtown where there's already a lack of parking. But draw them to the
Yeah.
places we want them to park, like up at the upper parking lot over here or something like that. Put them in places like that.
yeah, I think it's and there's talking to revision too. It's a mix of that. I mean, because you want to be friendly with that. You want them in those areas that are. And there's other things for new developments. There's also all kinds of credits
Yeah.
to bearing a lines that, you know, most people are trying to charge at home. So if you build this 150 units, do we try and say, hey, can you pipe this line in here, and then they'll pay 90% of the cost there.
Yeah, so places
You know.
like that, that we're encouraging the development or the use.
Right. The marina is also kind of a mixed thing. There already is a parking pressure there. I talked to Adam about that, especially those front rows. I think that's also a prime place for parking meters, because whenever you have that much pressure on a place, like that's where you want to, you know, if you want that prime spot in the front rows.
We don't want
you
to
know.
drive them away, too.
But we also want to draw people to that. I know myself, I had no idea that that marina was there until last year because of the food truck. I talked to probably the 7th person that food truck is driving a lot of new people to be like, wow, Ellsworth has this marina. So, you know, there's parking
Even
pressures
better
there
after
already.
the dredge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot better.
A lot better after the dredge.
Yeah, that's supposed to be over the next couple months. We're gonna get a finding on the price for the city match on that. And you can't use grant funding to offset that necessarily. There might be some state grant funding, but we can't use federal grant funding, so I'm with bated breath waiting for that one, but.
The only other thing about the parking meters is, I mean, we're doing it so that we don't have to hire someone to go around and ticket, but you're gonna still have to you're gonna have to, if you have parking meters, people will ignore them unless you have someone walking around enforcing them. So,
Yeah, I
either
think.
way, you're gonna have enforcement, so.
I've got a ton of, I have found my first, you know, as I've said, I've been polling downtown business owners and I was pretty surprised that a lot of them were supportive of this, but I found my first one who was not supportive of this. They're very similar to your concerns about them, Michelle, and like, this is kind of not my Ellsworth. You know, you come here for park for free, that's, you know, that's part of the contract here. But we got talking about more and, you know, a lot of the taxes, like I think there's a few reasons for the meters, not just to create turnover there, but also as a revenue stream as we look towards reducing some of the burden that goes on to I think directionally, but it's a balance, and I think I gotta do a lot more information gathering on what kind of revenue that could drive, you know, what our future growth potentials are. I do, you know, it pained me to have, I think it pained all of us to have any kind of increase. I think we lessened it to what it was in I think it's 17.45 was the final. But, you know, how do we kind of live within the growth, the percentage increase of on property values, which, you know, and the new construction, which is adding property tax base with us, but also trying to do things like trying to save as many pieces within the budget as possible, and then revenue driving as well, and grant driving. And, you know, how do we kind of pull all those together so that we can, you know, get this tax rate for the people that live here that are really taking care of a lot of services for the 85,000 or so people that rely on this as a service center, and the 4 million tourists that come through to Acadia, and the 2 million roughly that go to down East Main. Like, how do we kind of balance all of those things? And I have a feeling that's going to be.
I get it. It just, when you look at who does meters, it's mostly tourist towns. Bar Harbor's a tourist town. People come to Ellsworth to shop, to visit their friends, to go to the restaurants and things like that, and it's year-round, and like at the harbor, people go down there because they grab their lunch and they go down there and watch the boats and the birds and the seals and things like that, you know, for an hour or so while they eat their lunch and things like that. It's more of a community. We're not a invisible tourist town where nobody knows each other, you know, that the businesses are owned by seasonal people and they go away. It's different. So, and I would hate to lose that in Ellsworth. I really and truly would. I'm not saying like this parking lot shouldn't be paid parking and having paid parking in certain areas. although you will get pushback, you know, eventually, it's not just the downtown people, but it is, there's a difference. You know, you look at, you know, Bangor, Brewer, you look at Bucksport, you look at all these different places, and where they're trying to encourage people to shop in their local businesses, they don't have parking meters, because it discourages people from using it. Even when I go to Bar Harbor, I park behind the post office, I don't have to use those meters. I find places that have free parking.
Bangor has a number of
Parking meters?
you need permits.
And I know, I park in one, that's what I said, having a parking, that's for workers. So like, I have a card that I pay a monthly parking fee because I work there and I park my car all day. And then they have 2-hour parking and limited parking like we used to have and I've got employees that go out every 2 hours and move their vehicle for that reason. They used to do that here.
Union Trust
Union Trust used to do
down
it
here,
here,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
But they
a,
don't have parking meters in their downtown.
and we'll do a full inventory of cities and towns. I've got a few on this list that are kind of more analogous, I think, to Ellsworth to kind of give you that piece. There's also areas where you give credits to the local residents so that they're not having to be here, and it's you know, credits to the local residents for a certain amount, credits to the people who are working here, like you talked about, but also thinking about, you know, it's a lot of demand that we put on the taxpayer of Ellsworth, because yes, there are the people that live here, but they cover a lot of the other services. So for me, coming from Castine, I park here, I use this roads, I use this parking lot every single day, and the city of Ellsworth taxpayer kind of in some ways subsidizes my use of all these resources. Do I want to tax myself by having parking meters or parking for, no. But that's my own personal piece. Maybe we should try to, knowing that we're covering this 85,000 people, that there's so many people coming in here, that there's so many pressures, how do we look at revenue streams that don't just put it all on the city's 9,000 people to cover that for everybody else? Knowing it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be, and I do think there's a lot more tourists that are coming here, that are using our downtown and our businesses, and maybe that funding helps with further beautification and further specific types of things, or just cover the delta of paying for parking meter enforcement and some other things that we would otherwise have to tax for, but we can set aside so we don't have to tax for those things.
How about, what has Belfast done? Do you know?
They have parking meters, yeah.
I was just there last weekend.
They have parking meters?
Nope.
No?
They don't?
I thought they had, I think so. Okay, I don't know, but I thought
My
they
only
had.
question
They
was,
have, they
is I
actually
know,
have free municipal parking lots all over the place down there.
I know that we're not a Belfast as far as the waterfront opportunities go, but we're trying to get there.
We could be.
Right.
I walked that harbor walk. I
So
went down
my-
because you were
my
talking about it. I didn't even know it was
question-
there.
It's awesome.
Oh, and it was packed on a rainy day,
Oh, it's beautiful.
and I think ours would be, well, I should
Yeah,
say better.
yeah,
but-
no, we could be. We could absolutely be.
Well, and that's why I'm asking about the parking meters, because it seems like they have become more of a destination place than they ever were 30 years ago.
Yeah.
30 years ago, I don't think that there was
Well,
a
there was
robust.
a chicken farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to analyze the traffic, right? Because I think that Ellsworth might have 10x what Belfast gets in terms of traffic, in terms of foot traffic, other things.
They have a bypass.
Yeah, so.
Right, I mean, so when that bypass happened, I think all of a sudden downtown I won't say all of a sudden, over time, downtown started to be a destination.
Yeah.
MBNA, remember when he came?
Yeah.
That he
Yeah.
poured a ton of money into Belfast.
Yeah, and they did their Riverwalk, and to me, that's a big,
beautiful.
another North Star piece that I think we, it makes so much sense, and maybe the parking meters and other things goes towards the funding of getting that built across in conservation, or in conjunction with private philanthropy and maybe additional city funds. But I know we're going to kick the tires. Actually, have a meeting next week to start talking about that. We had a meeting in Belfast, and I'll probably come to council at some point with, hey, like, we want to this has been talked about for 20, 30 years now, so how do we really start doing it? Maybe we do it in pieces and start, connecting the marina one piece at a time, setting some goals, setting some benchmarks, and how we're going to do that and get there, because that could really help.
So you keep saying that you can't walk from the marina to Ellsworth, to the downtown? You absolutely can. I do it all the time. We get off the boat and we go to Fogtown, we come over to Main Street. You absolutely can.
It's not a walk and Yeah,
You walk around the park and you get on the sidewalk and you walk either Water Street or.
3 or 4 times you hit a spot where you're in like a parking lot, just pavement. I mean, you can, like,
Yeah.
yeah, you can.
Yeah, but I mean,
um,
I hate to have people say that it's not walkable from the harbor to the downtown and use it, because it is. You don't want to discourage people from trying, because I do it all the time, all summer
Very
long.
much, very much walkable.
Yeah, so I don't want people to think that if they come into the harbor that they can't get to downtown, because it's very walkable. It's just not pretty, like the harbor walk.
There's no
is.
sidewalk. I mean, you're
Absolutely.
gonna have to walk through parking lots, 3 or 4. I mean, I drove it yesterday under just this purposes. It's not like something that's natural. There's not even signage to get there. I mean, if you knew you could do it, but you're gonna have to walk through 2 or 3 non-sidewalked parking lots that have trucks and kind of, it's not a.
I think the word is, it's not inviting. It's doable.
It's
but not
absolutely
inviting.
doable. I mean, there's sidewalks except for where you go across Main Shellfish, but there's sidewalks the entire way. New ones, actually.
Well, there's
New,
sidewalks on the further side, and then you get to a break for 2. I just analyzed this.
No, I know, but, yeah, but it's,
All the way from Washington Street to Main Street is sidewalk.
yeah, other than people's driveways, but. yeah.
Driveways, and they're
Have that
big
everywhere.
ones.
No. But, or you could cut up Franklin Street, which is really easy. That's what I do, but, yeah.
And as
Just-
far as Belfast goes, you're commenting on Belfast, hold on to your sneakers, because that potato plant that burned is now going on the market. You want to talk about a development opportunity on their waterfront, right downtown. This is going to be amazing what someone comes in and does there.
Yeah. Cool.
It is nice, but I
Andy's
also
going to work.
think, yeah, me too. I gotta
Go back to work.
Hey, we got 4 on this one. You don't even need.